Night in the desert smells softly of iron and dust. The bus that carries you has no logo, no route number, and windows dark enough to turn your face into a calm silhouette. The engine hums at a low, even pitch, as if it understands that loud sounds do not belong out here. You watch your hands because there is nothing else to see. The lifelines in your palms look deeper under this light, like small riverbeds that forgot to dry. The bus slows without a jerk. The door opens and a breath of cool air touches your cheeks like a familiar hand. Outside, light seems to rise from the ground instead of falling from above. Muted even, a phosphorescent hush stretched over the sand. There are no posts, no obvious fence, only the idea of a fence and the sense that you have already crossed it. 2 doors in a wedge of rock, no sign. The corridor beyond is short, the elevator almost silent. When the doors slide open, the first thing you notice is the absence of echo. The room receives your footsteps and keeps them. Ceiling a little low, corners softened, air a shade colder than comfort. On a table waits a thin folder. Safety rules, a non-disclosure page, several paragraphs that read like lines you somehow memorized earlier in life. Speak only to your team. Discuss only your section. Outside, speak not at all. You sign with a hand that tries to be smaller than it is. They take you to a larger space. The air there has a quiet vibration, like a library after hours. At the center rests a shape that is more suggestion than machine. Metallic, yet not heavy, perched on 3 slender supports like a bowl of light turned upside down. The edges are seamless. Your reflection does not land on it. It floats and slides, as if the surface refuses to hold anyone's image long enough to let it be hurt. No touching, says a courteous low voice. No looking inside without clearance. Listen only to the voice. The voice belongs to someone who has said difficult things many times with bedtime gentleness. He points to a schematic, 3 ribbed modules under the floor, a column passing up through the ceiling with no visible joint. The labels are familiar words that feel slightly out of place. Amplifiers, waveguides, reactor. He adds quietly, any explanation here is a metaphor. That thought loosens something in your chest, and your shoulders drop by a patient inch. Sometimes, they power the device for only a breath. Air answers first. A deep tone is not heard so much as felt through bone. The way a long hallway announces a train. Light in the floor recesses warms. Not brighter, simply warmer, like a night lamp turned toward the wall. The room seems to lean the smallest degree, though not a single item moves. The sensation is not fear. It is the feeling of a train entering a tunnel with perfect timing. Between runs, you sit on a wooden bench along the wall. The bench carries the warmth of other patient people. The conditioned air draws faint lines on the ceiling like chalk rubbed to softness. You think about complicated things that behave as if they dislike attention. Quiet engines, closed doors, long signatures under short statements. Another hall holds a cutaway mock-up, the same form opened like a textbook illustration. There, the rules relax. You are allowed to trace the lines with your finger, material that is both ceramic and metal, no visible welds anywhere. Where a joint should be, the surface only becomes. You smile without sound. This breaks several rules, you think. Someone not far away smiles too, as if the thought travels better than words here. Days settle into the slow rhythm of checklists. Fear dissolves into routine like sugar into warm water. You become grateful for small, steady things. The paper cup of coffee, the short walk to the badge reader, the neat note taped on the glass. 22 on test. Observe from room 3. When couriers bring boxes, You stand for a second just to hear the hushed rasp of cardboard. Inside that sound there is rhythm, and inside the rhythm a kind of promise that the desert will remain quiet. On certain Wednesdays you are asked to go up. The observation platform smells faintly of stone. The horizon glows with its own thin memory of starlight. The slope below smooths into a pad that in daylight would look like part of the hill. You lift the binoculars. There is no flash, no form, only a change in the texture of air like heat over summer asphalt. Except, this is night. Coming alive, someone murmurs. 5%. 10. The space above the pad takes a small breath. The gentle vibration returns inside your ribs. The object rises to the height of a person and stays there, not fighting gravity so much as ignoring its invitation. It slides forward as if a softer place has appeared ahead, and it is polite to step into softness. The stopwatch means nothing. Your breathing is the measure. Shutdown arrives in reverse. The warmth fades at the floor. The tone settles back into the bones of the building, and the air looks once again like ordinary air. Thank you, says the courteous voice as if concluding a recital. The hallway down feels shorter. In the cafeteria, tea waits, strong and forgiving. You cup the paper lid to keep the heat. Later, your mind will replay not the lift itself, but how quiet your chest felt afterward. That night, you dream about a shoreline. The water lies very flat. A small boat rises and hovers just a little, leaving no rings at all. Morning arrives without an alarm. A new page sits in the folder. Observation phase extended. Your signature has grown smaller still, as if the hand learned to speak in a gentle whisper. By now, the room is partly yours. You touch the cool wall on your way, in the way people touch familiar trees. Same light, same lines, the same polite hum. You sit on the bench and understand that if this thing had a name, it would be a short 4-letter word without any hissing consonants. For even the softest whisper can be too sharp in a place that treasures sleep. The ride back occurs the way all returns in deserts do, without hurry, without landmarks, with a certainty that is earned from repetition. The windows hold your face again, but the face has less to say. The driver does not clear his throat. The road folds behind in calm sheets like parchment fed, steadily, beneath a careful hand. You close your eyes before the bus slows. The low tone, the one that feels like world level, floats at the edge of hearing, more posture than sound. Sleep takes you the way these corridors take footsteps, quietly, completely, and with a promise to keep them safe. In the orientation room, there had been on the first morning a device that looked like a metal horseshoe married to a window frame. They called it a hand geometry reader. You were told to slide your palm in and keep still while the prongs settled lightly on the knuckles. The machine hummed like a refrigerator heard from another room. A green light climbed a thin column and paused. Never sharp, never urgent. You remember thinking that all the machines here behaved like good librarians. They did their work and asked for silence only by setting an example. Even the paperwork adored quiet. Forms had lines that were a fraction wider than normal, encouraging slow, neat letters. The pens did not scratch. They floated. The chairs did not squeak. They accepted weight the way a memory receives a detail. When the air vents cycled, you could hear the smallest difference. 3 beats of a fan deep in the wall, then a gentle return to normal. You learned the building's breathing the way a parent learns the sounds of a sleeping child. Once, while waiting for the elevator, you noticed a bulletin board with notices clipped under glass. No jokes, no cartoons, no stern warnings. Only times, names, and arrows drawn with a ruler. In the corner, A single photograph showed the test pad under a daylight sky. The photo looked almost blank, an ocean of sand marked by a darker oval, as featureless as a thought not yet spoken. Underneath, a caption in small letters, Pad B, northeast lip, consolidated. You placed the tip of your finger near the glass without touching it, as if pointing might wake the image. Meals followed their own kindness. Soup that never scalded. Bread that broke quietly. People drifted to tables and arranged themselves like commas in soft line breaks. Conversation stayed beneath a comfortable ceiling. When a laugh escaped, it surprised everyone and then became part of the room's music. You learned that many of the people had once worked in ordinary places. Power plants, labs, long gray buildings with good parking. Here, their skills narrowed the way a river narrows when it moves into a canyon. Precision became a way of being polite. There was talk of schedules. Wednesday nights had a reputation. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing ever ran late. The phrase, Wednesday at 10, entered the language like a lullaby. If you had been keeping a diary, no one did. Diaries were discouraged. It would have been the recurrent line. Weds 22 aswai. Tone felt even. Pad returned to stillness 22 akurs 08. On such nights the stars above the hill looked particularly patient, as if they too respected a standing appointment. On a maintenance afternoon, they wheeled in the cutaway again. The instructor, who had one of those calm faces that make you think of night nurses, pointed at a smooth chamber that descended from the belly of the craft, like the throat of a bell. See this section, she said. The finish is wrong for a human tool. Not better, simply not ours. Some chuckled at the word better. She smiled because the room had made a joke without raising its voice. Our language makes us arrogant accidentally, she added, and let the silence finish the lesson. Later, you were given a blank page and asked to map the path a sound might take through a shape that dislikes seams. You drew with a slow pencil, lines arced like the course of migrating birds, never quite touching the edges. When you set the pencil down, the page looked like a soft constellation. The instructor nodded. Metaphors, she said again, but it helps to have respectable metaphors. You wondered whether the craft thought of its own processes as metaphors too, or whether it simply was and needed no analogies. The routine made life outside feel like a dream that insisted on details. Gas prices, traffic lights, the shape of your own mailbox. Inside, the details insisted on peace. One morning, you arrived early and the big room was empty, except for a faint aroma of solvent with a lemon patience to it. You sat alone on the bench. The object rested on its supports the way a sleeping animal rests on breath. You did not speak to it. You did not name it. But the urge to thank it for existing came and went, as gently as the movement of the air. Security was never dramatic. You carried the same badge you had carried yesterday. You passed the same camera that never clicked. When checks were required, they resembled etiquette more than suspicion. People presented their bags like gifts and accepted them back like borrowed books. The only unusual ritual involved a walk through a narrow frame that wrapped you in a whisper of fields. It left your hair faintly charged, so that a few strands stood up with the dignity of grass remembering wind. On the longest day, you were asked to remain after the others left. The low voice, your guide, met you near the hand reader and led you to a viewing well that you had not noticed before. It looked like a shallow amphitheater carved into the floor. The object sat above and beyond, calm as the moon. Today, we attempt a lateral without rotation, he said, as people took their places, the way an orchestra folds itself into chairs. A light above the far door turned to a tender amber. A tone, deep and precise, pressed its palm against your ribs and waited. The shift it made was the smallest in the world, and yet more complete than any movement you had ever seen. Not a slide, not a roll. It occupied a new location as if the old one had sighed out of use. The bench under you barely remembered to creak. A pencil rolled a centimeter and stopped as if reassured. You looked at the faces beside you. No one blinked. Awe can be noisy, you realized. But here, it practiced stillness like a craft. The amber light cooled back toward white. Breath returned to the room from wherever it had been kept. When you finally returned to the surface, the desert wind braided through the sparse brush. With the sound of sleep being turned over on its pillow, the bus waited with the patience of an old friend who knows the route by heart. You climbed in, and the seats received you. The driver glanced at the mirror and then away, keeping privacy like a promise. As the engine settled into its traveling note, you set your head against the cool window, watching the night reduce severe shapes into kind shadows. A star fell somewhere and did not bother the horizon.